Welcome to the Masons Podcast, your source of insight and innovation in New Zealand building and construction. Each episode explores the products, systems and solutions that support trades, specifiers and developers to deliver high quality, durable and efficient buildings across Aotearoa, New Zealand. From building envelope performance to flooring, acoustics and fire separation systems, we share practical knowledge and ideas that help shape the built environment.
Hi, I'm Michelle and I'm a building designer and I'm joined by Mason's technical manager, Arthur Whitfield. In this episode, we're taking a closer look at wall underlays, how they work, why they're important for secondary moisture management, and what to consider when selecting the right product. We'll explore the different types used in New Zealand, including Mason's Barricade FR. We'll explain how they fit together with other components like DPCs, cavity closers, battens and flashing tapes to create a complete wall system. Good morning, Arthur. Great to meet with you this morning. Today, we hope we will provide another informative podcast to our listeners, users and specifiers of Mason's building products. Arthur, can you tell us what the story is behind Mason's, who they are and what they specialise in?
Yeah, hi Michelle. Mason's was started by Trent Mason and his wife over 20 years ago. Trent comes from a family of bricklayers. So when he came to New Zealand as a young guy, he had several bricklaying groups running around laying bricks. And then he developed a plaster over brick as a system and marketed that around Auckland. He then developed a better brick tie and sold that into the market. So from there, it's just been a natural progression of adding other products, solutions and systems for the building envelope. So I would call us like a building envelope related company.
Great, yeah. Okay. And can you tell us a bit about what you do within the company?
Yeah, so I'm the technical manager. I work with developing new products, research and development. There's quite a lot of compliance with the building code and supporting the team and the clients.
Today we're going to talk specifically about wall underlays. If you can tell us exactly what is a wall underlay?
Right, a wall underlay is a product that goes underneath the cladding, it goes in front of the framing, and it stops air and water intrusion into the dry envelope, into the framing line. So its purpose is to try and keep the insulation dry and to stop air movement and moisture getting inside the dry envelope. It is a secondary, very much a secondary
line of defence,
secondary moisture management, the primary being the exterior cladding and flashings.
Sure, okay. Look, there's other terms out there such as vapour barrier, there's building membrane, building wrap. Are these all the same things?
Pretty much, yeah. So when it comes to wall underlay, we toss around lots of terms in the industry. Building paper, very common still. That is because for many, many years, the underlay literally was craft paper infused with bitumen. It's an old technology, been around for a long time. So we then talk about wrap. What we're talking about there is building wrap or house wrap. The standards call it pliable wall underlay. Flexible wall underlay is another term. So yes, building membrane, I suppose it's a little more technical approach. Vapour barrier refers to more of an underlay that actually completely stops the movement of water vapour.
Okay. And can you explain to us how they contribute to secondary moisture management within the building envelope?
Right. Okay, so we've mentioned about the wall underlay sits outside of the framing line, underneath the cladding line. So its job is to act as a secondary drainage plane for any moisture that gets inside the cavity, or if it's direct fix, somehow gets past the cladding and the flashings, or if any moisture develops in that space between the underlay and the cladding, whether that be a cavity or if it's a direct fix cladding. Its job is to allow that water to drain down.
Yes.
And it's very, very important part of it is to stop air movement at that line.
Yes.
Yeah.
So those two things about letting the water to drain and controlling the air movement, super important.
Yes.
Okay. Can it help prevent mould or rot inside the wall cavity?
Absolutely, indirectly.
Yes.
So, rot and mould growth inside of the wall cavity would be because we've got moisture or water in places that we don't want it and it can't escape. It either can't drain or it can't diffuse out. So that is a major problem. A leaky homes crisis that we had many years ago was all about water getting in and not getting out.
Yes.
So can underlay help? Yes, it can help it prevent getting water and moisture where it shouldn't belong. And it have the ability to dry by allowing water vapour to pass, sometimes called breathable underlays.
Yes.
Bit of a misnomer. They're not, strictly speaking, truly breathable. What they can do is allow water vapour to diffuse through.
Okay, fabulous. And there's several different types of wall underlay out there. What are the main types used in New Zealand buildings?
Sure. So people will be very familiar with standard flexible wall underlay or building paper. You see that on many building sites, often white with printing on it. Next most common type would be a rigid wall underlay, and there are many types out there. People will see fibre cement, rigid underlays, plywood based on rigid underlays, and OSB board based rigid underlays. Probably the type that people are starting to see more and more that have been on the market probably 4 or 5 years now are the flexible air barrier type products.
Okay.
So they sort of fall in between the first two. And then lastly, there's a hybrid wall underlay that we probably don't see that often, but that is where you have plywood or fibre cement over the frames and then a flexible wall underlay over the top. Or sometimes that's self-adhesive.
Right.
So there's a sticky underlay that goes over a rigid substrate. And we're seeing that more and more with increased airtightness type homes,
Right.
people designing for airtightness, for energy efficiency.
Yes, sure.
Yeah.
Okay. And what would be the main things to think about when choosing a wall underlay?
Right. Well, that very much depends on the designer or the client's preferences for how much they wish to spend on the underlay layer and what other problems they're trying to solve, whether that be bracing or seismic performance, whether they're looking for productivity gains such as being able to carry on inside with the interior works if there's no cladding in place. So you can simultaneously run interior and exterior gangs on your job. That's where your flexible air barrier systems or your rigid air barrier systems offer a host of benefits that the standard flexible wall underlays cannot.
Yeah, okay. And what do you think would matter the most out of all those things? What would be most important? I suppose up to the designer again or the builder.
Well, they all need to do the fundamental job of allowing drainage, basically allowing water to drain down and deflect any bulk water that comes into contact with it. They all need to allow water vapour to diffuse.
Yeah.
That's super important. So you've got to stop air movement inside the framing line and you've got to make sure that any water drains. That's the fundamental job.
Yes.
And then it's what else the designer wants.
Yeah.
Bracing, tie down, fire resistance, air tightness. So if you're going maybe full passive house or you're going high energy efficient homes, then there's a whole lot of design decisions around that with underlays as well.
There is, yeah. So it's a combination of many, many factors. Yeah. Masons provide a variety of wall underlays. How many do they actually have?
There's 5. So we have Barricade FR, which is the main product we're talking about. We have the Uni Plus and Uni Pro flexible air barriers. We have Barricade Weather Defence as our rigid wall underlay system. And then we have Barricade WD, which is our self-adhesive wrap, sometimes called a weather resistive barrier or WRB.
Right, so many. And can you tell us the difference between them all?
It would really take a long time, but our standard house wrap is Barricade FR. So that's our cost-efficient, everyday, commonly used, go-to, standards compliant type product.
Mostly used on a residential builds?
Yeah.
Okay.
Where you don't need anything too special. You just need something to do a good, basic, standard job as an underlay.
Yes.
That's Barricade FR.
Okay.
Uni Plus and Uni Pro are flexible air barriers. They offer the ability to carry on with interior works for up to 90 or 150 days, as long as it's installed according to our proprietary system. So that gives you some of the benefits of a rigid air barrier. Some of them. Yeah.
With a reduced cost probably too.
Oh, well, the biggest saving there is labour, but we're going to talk about that in a later pod, I think.
Okay.
Rigid air barriers offer a host of benefits to both designers and the occupants of the building. There is a lot more work in putting up a rigid air barrier, but clearly a lot of people think that that's well worthwhile because of the great benefits they offer. And it depends on the product, what they offer people. But everything from acoustic performance, fire performance, bracing and tying down, some major wins you can get.
Yeah,
and they're really good. They're really good at stopping air movement in and out of the building. But they're labour intensive to put up.
They are. So what about wind zones and underlays?
Right, so the best thing for designers or builders to do is to check with the manufacturer, in this case I guess we focus on Mason's products, to have a look at the documentation that we offer with each of the underlay products and see what wind zones it's rated for. So all of the underlays will do all of the wind zones in E2AS1, but each may have a different system, especially to do with the fixing methods and spacings and so on. So for example, with Barricade FR is a conventional, pliable or standard flexible wall underlay. You can go up to very high wind zone with standard fixing method, but beyond that, into extra high, it must have a rigid wall underlay behind it. So that's per E2AS1.
It is.
You just have to comply with that. So when we talk about the other ones in our range, yes, you can use them all up into extra high, but then there will be specific methods, specific spacings. There will be some restrictions on stud spacings and nogging and that sort of thing. So it's best to check the literature. Above that, we often get requests for above extra high. That is the realm of the structural engineer. The client and the building designer need to refer to the structural engineer. We just can't offer anything there. I mean, we can't publish anything about that.
Okay, so let's chat a bit more specifically about the Barricade FR product. This is a standard wall underlay. Can you tell us what are the benefits of Barricade FR?
I guess the benefit of Barricade FR is that it is very cost effective. It does a good job as a wall underlay, a standard wall underlay. It's readily available throughout New Zealand in terms of benefits. So I guess it's cost effective and convenience, and it's fully compliant.
And what does FR mean? Does this give it an advantage in any way?
Well, FR simply in our range stands for fire retardant.
Yes.
And what that means is additives have been put in at production time to slow the ignition if it's exposed to a flame, and if it does catch fire, it burns slowly and doesn't produce too much smoke, etc.
Great, okay. And the main point of using Barricade FR in the wall build-up, what's it actually there to do?
Basically, Barricade FR acts as the wall underlay. So it's an important job of that secondary drainage plane and as a weather line to stop moisture and air being carried inside the dry envelope.
Okay, what if someone wanted to swap it out for a different underlay on site? Would they have to make sure it was compliant to the same wind zones, exposure zone times, fire rating requirements, etc.?
Yeah, without question. Any substitution. I mean, look, no manufacturer likes to talk about substitution of their products, or designers get frustrated, but it does happen for all sorts of reasons. The principle is it needs to be the same or better, and there has to be a clear demonstration of compliance with the New Zealand Building Code, and contact the Building Control Authority and make sure they're happy with the substitution, and there's different procedures for that.
Okay. What if you go over the UV exposure time on site? What would happen there?
Okay, so manufacturers such as ourselves, distributors, we all, for this type of product, the flexible wall underlay products, we all quote UV exposure times. That is to do with the New Zealand standards for wall underlays, where there's specific requirements for the tensile strengths.
Right.
So after UV exposure, these products slowly lose their tensile strengths, their physical properties.
Okay.
So there is a limit to which they can't go past. So when we quote a limit, like 60 days, once you go over that, technically it's no longer complying. So there's a very small amount of wiggle room, but typically that requires removal and reinstatement or overwrapping. Most people go for an overwrap.
Overwrap, okay.
Always at the discretion of the council, but most councils are happy with an overwrap if it's well managed. And we're certainly happy with it.
And you're happy with it. That's the main thing.
The best thing is not to exceed the UV rating of the underlay, and that goes for all manufacturers.
Yeah.
But it happens, and so then it's a careful overlay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we'll say that it's outside of code mark or published documents, so there has to be a process of checking with the council that they're comfortable, and they will allow it, and we then usually go through a process of supporting that in writing.
Great. Yeah. Okay. So what makes your Barricade FR the go-to underlay for most jobs?
Simply, it's cost effective.
Cost effective, yeah. And an important one here, Arthur, what flashing tapes can it be used with?
Right, so we would encourage people to use the 40 below flashing tape range, which we have. So Ultra Sticky, Platinum or Flex are the three brands or sub-brands of 40 below, or a hydro flashing tape. Now that said, there's a huge amount of flashing tapes out there on the market. Any brands appraised or code mark certified, or if anybody else can show a clear compliance with the New Zealand Building Code and good performance, may be used with Barricade FR. But we always encourage people to use their own flashing tape products as we've tested them and checked that they work well.
Yep, okay. Now, I guess there's a lot of other components that Mason supply that assist in making the whole underlay system. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, like I guess the chief ones, we've talked about how important it is to let a water drain down and allow air to circulate, but not be carried through the weather line and past the framing line. So penetration seals are very important, which we market for sealing up pipework and conduits that come through the underlay or the wrap line. Basically, above the wind joinery head and at the base of the cavity, if it's light cladding, cavity closers or vermin strips, which Mason's markets under the Redway E2 flashing range. Yes. We also have wrap strap, which supports the underlay at 300 intervals up and down the framing. That's to make sure that the wrap doesn't intrude into the cavity, if there is a cavity, once the insulation is installed. Really important that dry air movement and drainage is preserved. What else do we have? There is the PEF rod that goes around the windows. Yep. And ours is called airtight. That's once again aimed at controlling air movement. So that's a backer for the expanded foam or the sealant that the specifier pulls up.
Great.
We have the DPC dry fix made from recycled polyethylene bags and things here in Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland. That goes underneath the bottom plate. If we're assuming that this is a framed wall assembly, that to separate it from the concrete slab.
Okay.
And finally, we also offer ventilated battens, which can be used vertically or horizontally to keep the air and water moving around in that cavity should it need to.
Yeah.
And flashing tapes. So the joinery openings and the framed openings must be flashed according to E2AS1. So we offer the 40 below range and the hydro range of flashing tapes.
For that, great. Okay. How are they all connected?
Well, they work together as a system to make sure there's sufficient drainage and drying and controlling air movement, particularly outside of the framing line. So the job of the underlay and all the components that go with it are to make sure we deflect or drain water, that we allow air to move in the cavity or outside of the wrap layer if there's no cavity, but no air intruding into the framing line or into the dry envelope of the house. So that's how all those components work together. I mean, we haven't mentioned the other parts of the building like the roof or the roof underlay and other things, but
it's all creating a system.
And of course, the cladding, the hero product and the flashings on the outside, we haven't talked much about that.
First line of defence.
And even the wall linings on the inside, they play a part with controlling air movement and air pressures. And of course, the insulation, we haven't mentioned much, super important. And keeping people comfortable.
It's a whole wall assembly.
It's a whole
together,
wall
isn't
assembly.
it?
And ours, the bits we've talked about today are maybe a quarter of it, but they're a really important unsung hero quarter, in my opinion.
Okay, so in summary, to wrap it up today, the product we've mainly discussed is Barricade FR wall underlay. Where can people find out more about Barricade FR?
I guess the first place to go is mpb.co.nz. You can also find information on Master Spec, Smart Spec and EBOS for a good place to start.
Great. Thanks for joining us today, Arthur, and we will meet you for our next episode.
My pleasure. Looking forward to it. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Masons podcast. We hope you've gained some practical insights and ideas for your next project. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode and visit us at mpb.co.nz for more information on our product systems and solutions. And join us next time as we continue to explore smarter ways and solutions for building in New Zealand.
This podcast is for general information only. While we aim to provide accurate details on building products and systems, Masons is not liable for reliance on this content. Always follow product specifications, manufacturer's instructions, and relevant building codes.